new line of inquiry? And if not, the way that Betsy has laid out, is there another way for investigators to get around this issue of the missing records?
Totally new line of inquiry, and it's really unfortunate because this gap may make the 18 minutes of the Nixon tapes case that we're missing look quaint by contrast. And you had said it's unusual to borrow cell phones from other people, but it's not unusual if you're a mobster, and because you do it because it makes things tough to trace. And that's what it looks like is going on here. I'm sure that Trump would have made his calls on payphones if that didn't imply he had to leave the house. Indeed, Trump really did operate in this, this is of a piece with other stories in which he ran the presidency like a mob boss. If you don't create a record, you can't get caught. And what he didn't realize is that the presidency is more like filing your taxes. You're liable for the stuff you forget to include. And, well, I guess, to be fair, it's not like he could draw on much personal experience with paying taxes either. But the fundamental point here is that, there's an entire legal regime to ensure the preservation of records. The Presidential Records Act is part of that. And when you go into the government, on like day one, you're told you can't use other cell phones. You got to use only your phone for official work, only your official email. There's a whole suite of things you're told. And, it's impossible that Trump wasn't told those things. He had to have been told. So that makes a criminal investigation of this by the Justice Department more likely. This is an easier thing than some of the other stuff, and it is of a piece with all these missing document stories.
Michael, I want to turn to your other big story, which we mentioned earlier, the National Archives finding classified information in the documents they retrieved from Mar-a-Lago. Walk us through what happened, where things stand now.
So Trump had taken with him a bunch of boxes from the residence down to Mar-a-Lago, as was reported earlier this week. And when those boxes arrive back at the National Archives, there's 15 or so boxes, they open them up. And when they begin to look at the contents of that, they recognize at least one piece, one document that contained, or they thought contained, or believed contained classified information. That raises a whole host of questions about why was it that there was a classified document that was essentially outside of government channels. So that's the whole thing about classified information. The idea is to keep it inside the government so foreign adversaries do not know about it. So it had been sitting in Mar-a-Lago near Trump's office in cardboard boxes for over a year. Then the National Archives looks at it and has to now figure out what to do about that. This issue is even more complicated than the Hillary Clinton issue, because as president, Donald Trump could declassify simply by saying it essentially out loud, any document or classified material that he wanted. So this classified material that they identified, they looked at and they thought was classified, what we don't know is what type of classified material was this? Was this something that Trump had declassified himself and took with him as a souvenir, but probably should have stayed with the government as a government record? Or is this something that was indeed classified when it was taken out of the White House? And what does that mean? So we're very early in the reporting on this, but when they opened the boxes, they saw something that concerned them.
Neil, understanding that we are very early in the reporting of this, what could the legal implications be for the former president?
They could be big. So I think we have three tiers of wrongdoing here. We've got the documents that Donald Trump hid in Florida, including some of this classified information, the documents he ripped up, and the documents he flushed down the toilet. And there's something poetic about all of this somehow winding up with a comparison with Hillary's email. So there's a political problem for Trump, but as you're saying, there's a criminal and legal one. So first, there are several statutes like 18 U.S.C. 2071 that forbid the concealment, removal, or destruction of documents. And interestingly, there's two punishments for that in the law. One is jail. but the other that Congress said is disqualification from being able to hold a future federal office. And that makes this tailor-made for this case. And it seems like the Attorney General has been worried about bringing an investigation against Donald Trump. This statute, actually, Congress is saying to the Attorney General, it's about people like Trump. It's tailor-made. It's for political officials. And one of the punishments, if you're convicted, is you can't run for office again. So that's one set of things. Then, as Michael says, the other punishment is for the classified information. And that's a serious thing. I mean, Sandy Berger, who was President Clinton's national security advisor, was someone I looked up to. He broke the law and faced the consequences for it by trying to take a unclassified document, as I out of the archives. Trump evidently did this with a bunch. And Michael's right to say the president has declassification authority, but it looks like it may be that these documents were taken away from the White House when Trump wasn't the president anymore. So he may not have exercised his declassification authority. You don't have any declassification authority as a former president.
Betsy, I want to talk a little bit about this Hillary Clinton